All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to crack the code on something that can be a company's greatest strength or its biggest weakness. We're talking about debt. So let's get right into it. You can think of a company's debt kind of like a mortgage. It's this super powerful way to use other people's money to buy assets and grow way faster than you could otherwise. But hey, just like a mortgage, if you suddenly can't make those payments, you're in a world of hurt. So how can we tell if it's a brilliant tool or a ticking time bomb? Well, lucky for us, financial analysts have a whole toolkit designed to answer that exact question. They're called leverage ratios. And these are the key metrics that give us a real peek under the hood at a company's financial setup and its ability to handle what it owes. So what's in this toolkit? We're going to walk through 4 key leverage ratios. Each one answers a different and absolutely crucial question about a company's financial health. Think of them as 4 different camera angles on the same subject. Okay, so first things first. Before we get into the weeds, we have to ask the most basic, most immediate question of all. Can this company actually afford to pay the interest on the money it's borrowed? And the tool for that job is the interest coverage ratio, or ICR. You might also hear it called the times interest earned ratio. And really, it just measures how many times over the company's income from its main business can cover its interest bill. And the formula? Super simple. You just take the company's operating income and divide it by its interest expense. Now, operating income, that's just the raw profit from the company's core business, right? Before you even think about interest or taxes. It's their pure, unadulterated earnings power. So, what's a good number here? Let's say a company has an ICR of like 20x. What does that mean? It means for every single dollar they owe in interest, they're pulling in $20 of operating income. That's a massive safety net. It shows they can very comfortably pay their bills. On the flip side, if you see a number under, say, 2, yeah, that's a big, big red flag. Okay, so the company can cover its interest payments. Great. But that's just the immediate threat. What about the bigger power struggle? When you look at the company's assets, who has a bigger claim to them? The people who lent the money or the people who actually own the company? And that's where our next tool comes in, the debt-to-equity ratio, or DDE for short. This one gets right to the heart of it. It directly weighs how much of the company is funded by lenders versus how much is funded by the owner's own investment. Now, to get this right, you gotta know what you're looking at. Total debt isn't just one loan. It's the whole shebang. All the interest-bearing stuff, from big long-term debt to even things like leases. And total equity? That's the skin in the game from the owners themselves, the shareholders. So the magic number here is 1. If that D/E ratio is greater than 1, it means the company is leaning more on debt than on its owner's money. Think about that. The lenders, they actually have a bigger claim on the company's assets than the owners do. That's why investors see that as pretty dangerous. What you want to see generally is a ratio of less than 1. All right, let's pivot a little. We've compared debt to the owner's stake. Now let's compare debt to everything the company owns, all its assets. The question we're asking now is pretty fundamental. How is all this stuff actually being paid for? And for that, we have the debt-to-asset ratio. It pretty much does what it says on the tin, right? It tells you exactly what percentage of a company's total assets was bought and paid for with borrowed money. It's a really direct look at how much a company relies on debt. And the math is easy. You just take the total debt, divide it by the total assets, and boom, you get a percentage. So if the answer is, say, 0.4, it means 40% of everything the company owns is financed by debt. And the takeaway couldn't be simpler. A higher debt-to-asset ratio, that's riskier. Plain and simple. It just means a bigger slice of the company's foundation is built on borrowed cash. But hold on, if that ratio tells us the debt side of the story, what's the flip side of that coin? What about the owner's stake, the equity? How does that relate to the total assets? And that brings us neatly to our final ratio. So let's meet the financial leverage ratio. And I love its other name, the equity multiplier. It's such a great name because it tells you exactly what it does. It measures how much the owner's equity is being multiplied to control a much larger base of assets. And the formula for this one? You take the company's total assets and divide it by the total equity. This gives you a really clear number for every $1 the owners have put in. How many dollars of stuff does the company actually control? Okay, let's break this down. If the ratio is exactly 1, well, that means assets equal equity. The company has 0 debt. Simple. But what if the ratio is, say, 3? That means for every $1 of equity from the owners, the company controls $3 of assets. So where did the other $2 come from? You guessed it, debt. And that's why a higher number here means higher leverage and higher risk. So there you have it, 4 different ratios. But here's the most important thing to remember. You can't just look at one of these in a vacuum. They don't tell the whole story by themselves. No, their real power, their real magic, comes when you put them all together to paint the full picture. So let's do a quick recap. We asked, can it pay its interest? That's your interest coverage ratio. Higher is always safer. Then who's really in control, the lenders or the owners? That's the debt to equity ratio, and you generally want that to be lower. Then we asked, how much of the company is literally built on debt? That's the debt to asset ratio, where a higher number is a warning sign. And finally, how much is that debt juicing the system? That's the financial leverage ratio, where higher means more leverage, which of course means more risk. And that is the key takeaway here. Lots of people can look at a company and see if it's profitable, but the real story, the deeper story, is in understanding the leverage that's creating that profit. So the next time you're looking at a company, go beyond that first question. Don't just ask, is it profitable? Ask, how is that profit being financed? Is it built on a solid foundation, or is it teetering on a mountain of debt? The answer to that? Well, that's going to tell you pretty much everything you need to know.